Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS Study Circle. Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an analysis of the Hindu newspaper from UPSC perspective. Today we will discuss the daily edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 18th August 2020. Now the articles that we are going to discuss today are displayed on your screen. Now most of the articles that have appeared in today's newspaper are continuously in news, and accordingly majority of them have already been covered in previous DNS videos. Now for example, this issue of Lieutenant Governor versus the Delhi Assembly or the Delhi government has been continuously in news for past 2 to 3 years, and accordingly two times questions have been asked in the mains examination in the year 2016 and 2018. Further, this issue has widely been covered in previous DNS videos. And accordingly, we have discussed the question that was asked in the mains examination of 2018 and was also covered in the Daily News Simplified. Also, the issue of contempt of the court has been continuously in news related to the advocate Prashant Bhushan's tweets. And as such, this has also been covered in a previous DNS video. And as these issues are continuously in news, do utilize this time for revision of these important issues. So let us start today's discussion now. Now this article on page number 1 is related to the contempt of court case against advocate Prashant Bhushan, and this case was initiated in the year 2009 based on an interview of Prashant Bhushan with Tehelka magazine regarding corruption in judiciary. And this case of contempt of the court started because in this interview the advocate had talked about corruption in judiciary. So regarding the hearing of this contempt of the court case of 2009, the Supreme Court has framed certain questions for itself that it will look into. And in this background, the Supreme Court will hear the arguments on the process to make the allegations in the public sphere. And we already know that when allegations are made regarding the judges or the retired judges, then that amounts to the contempt of the court. So that is why the Supreme Court has framed certain questions for itself that it will look into regarding the corruption allegations against the sitting judges or the retired judges. And this will fall under the General Studies paper 2 under the topic Constitution and Polity. So let us look at what are the questions that have been framed by the Supreme Court in this regard. Now in the 2009 interview, Advocate Prashant Bhushan had leveled charges of corruption against certain sitting judges, and that was considered as contempt of the court, and accordingly a case was filed in the Supreme Court. And the advocate who was appearing on the behalf of Prashant Bhushan has said that the corruption allegations per se cannot be considered as contempt of the court. However, in this regard, a judge of the Supreme Court has pointed out that there is a judgment by Justice J.S. Verma in 1992 which observed that the instances where allegations of corruptions involve judges should not be made public at the first instance and must instead be reported to a court for further inquiry. So there are conflicting point of views regarding the allegations of corruption against sitting and the retired judges. And accordingly, the Supreme Court in this background has decided to relook into the matter of allegations of corruption against the judicial ecosystem. And in this, it will look at three prominent questions. First is, if any statement on judicial corruption are made in public, then under what circumstances such statements regarding the judicial corruption can be made. Now the second question that Supreme Court will look at is regarding the procedure that needs to be adopted in case allegations of corruption are made in public against sitting or retired judges. And the third question that the Supreme Court will look at is regarding the matters which are sub judice or under the court's consideration. So on matters which are under the court's consideration on which the final verdict has not been pronounced, then to what extent can the matter be argued in public through media or other mode of communication. So all these questions that the Supreme Court will look into are regarding the allegations of corruptions against the sitting or the retired judges which are made in the public sphere or in media. Now the lawyer who is appearing on the behalf of Prashant Bhushan in this 2009 contempt of the court case has said that allegations of corruption per se do not amount to contempt. However, Justice Mishra has pointed out that there is a judgment by Justice J.S. Verma of 1992 which observed that instances where allegations of corruptions are made against judges should not be made public at the first instance. So let us look at this 1992 judgment and when did it take place. Now in the history of Indian judiciary, the removal proceedings against the Supreme Court judge has been initiated only once since independence. And these removal proceedings were initiated against Justice V. Ramaswamy of the Supreme Court. So in this regard, in the 1992 judgment on the removal of Justice V. Ramaswamy, who was a Supreme Court, the judgment of Justice J.S. Verma had laid down the procedure to deal with allegations against a sitting judge. And the judge in this regard had to be given a fair opportunity to be heard before an inquiry committee which is formed under the Judges Enquiry Act of 1968. And such enquiry was to be done within a tight and limited circle of high judicial functionaries and parliamentarians without involving the media. So the judgment had clearly outlined that media should not be involved in the first instances in case of corruption allegations against the judges, or if any enquiry is taking place against a sitting judge regarding his removal. And in this regard, the judgment has observed that Supreme Court is the epitome of Indian judiciary, and an attack on it not only has the effect of tending an ordinary litigant of losing the confidence in the court, but it may also tend to lose the confidence in the mind of other judges in the country in the highest court. So what this means is that the judgment has observed that Supreme Court is the highest court of justice in India. And if such allegations are made against sitting judges of the Supreme Court, then it will impact the image of the Supreme Court as a temple of justice in the minds of people at large. And accordingly, the judgment had decided that hearings on the allegations of corruptions against judges should not be made public. So this is the only instance in Indian judiciary's history when removal proceedings were initiated against a judge of Supreme Court. And in that case, the Supreme Court had observed that the allegations that are made against the judge should not be made public in the media. Now after this, let us look at some of the important points related to the removal proceedings that were started against Justice V. Ramaswamy. Now the procedure to remove the Supreme Court judge was exercised for the first time in 1991, and it was initiated against the Justice Ramaswamy of the Supreme Court. Now Justice Ramaswamy was charged with financial irregularities while he was the Chief Justice of Punjab and Haryana High Court. And accordingly, an enquiry committee was formed under the Judges Enquiry Act of 1968. However, before this enquiry committee could present its report to the Lok Sabha was dissolved. So the question in front of the Supreme Court was that if the Lok Sabha is dissolved, does the motion of removal of the Supreme Court judge survive or not? Now we note that normally when the Lok Sabha is dissolved, all the pending bills in the Lok Sabha are also declared null and void, and they have to be freshly introduced. So in the case of Subcommittee of Judicial Accountability versus Union of India, the question arose whether the dissolution of Lok Sabha puts an end to the motion for the removal of concerned judge. And in this regard, the Supreme Court had held that motion for the removal of a judge under Article 124 does not lapse with the dissolution of Lok Sabha. So this is one important fact, that if a motion for the removal of a Supreme Court judge is in Lok Sabha and meanwhile the Lok Sabha gets dissolved, it does not lapse, and it can be an important fact for us from the preliminary examination point of view. Further, the report of the committee was tabled in Parliament in December 1992 and was debated in Lok Sabha. However, the motion to remove Justice Ramaswamy could not be passed by the required majority due to the absence of certain members of Parliament during the time of voting. And as such, Justice Ramaswamy was not impeached or removed from the Supreme Court through the proceedings that are provided in the Judges Enquiry Act and the Indian Constitution. So this is another important fact, that no judge has been impeached till date in the history of Indian judiciary, and this can be another important fact for us from the preliminary examination point of view. So as we note that in the 1992 judgment, the Supreme Court had said that the allegation of corruption should not be made public in the media. So in this regard, the Supreme Court is now re-looking into this matter and will look at these three prominent questions. So first is related to the statements on judicial corruptions that are made in public, and under what circumstances such allegations can be made in public. Secondly, what is the procedure that should be adopted in case of allegations of corruptions which are made in public. And finally, if a matter is sub judice or under the court's consideration, to what extent can the matter be argued in public through media or other mode of communication? So these are the three important questions that Supreme Court will look into. So this is a news in transition, and let us wait for the observation of Supreme Court regarding these three pertinent questions related to the contempt of the court. With this, let's take up the next news article now. Now, this article on page number 11 provides certain strategies and suggestions regarding reinventing the Indian economy in the backdrop of the COVID 19 pandemic and the related economic crisis that has happened across the world and in India. So, in this regard, it provides certain suggestions and strategies to revive the Indian economy. Now, we note that in response to the economic slowdown which is caused by the COVID 19 pandemic, the government of India had unveiled the Atmanirbhar Bharat package, which was worth rupees 20 lakh crores. However, this article argues that more needs to be done to kickstart economic revival, and accordingly, a number of suggestions have been provided in this article. So basically, the article recommends the government to focus on four pillars of economic revival. First pillar is the big businesses, second are the MSMEs, third are the startups, and fourth are the foreign investments. So let us look at all these suggestions that have been provided in this article, and they can be important for us in the General Studies paper 3 under the topic economic development. Now we note that there is rising anti-China sentiment in India and across the world. And also, the labor costs in China are now increasing. And this has prompted certain major companies to shift their production bases to labor surplus countries, for example, India. And many of these companies have shifted already to Vietnam, Bangladesh, etc., which are labor surplus and also where the labor costs are minimal. So, accordingly, the government of India needs to lay down a conducive framework to attract such companies which are looking to move out of China through tax incentives, ease of doing business, easier land acquisition, and reforms in labor laws. So, this is one of the suggestions that has been provided regarding big businesses. Second suggestion is regarding the manufacturing sector in India. And we note that the share of manufacturing sector to India's GDP has remained stagnant at almost 16 to 17% since the 1991 LPG reforms. And we note that manufacturing sector, which is the largest employment generating sector, needs to be optimally utilized for encashing the demographic dividend. And this can be done through creating more employment opportunities in the manufacturing sector. Further, we note that majority of the labor in India is absorbed in the agricultural sector and also in the informal sector. And such labor can be absorbed in manufacturing sector through good incentives. And accordingly, the article suggests that the state government should establish industrial cities to give an added thrust to the manufacturing sector. The next focus needs to be on sunrise sectors, and we need that India has to leverage the opportunities that will be created by the Industrial Revolution 4.0 and related technologies. So in this regard, the author suggests that there is a need to focus on new age technologies or the emerging technologies like the blockchain, robotics, machine learning, big data, and artificial intelligence. And also India needs to focus on certain sunrise sectors, for example, battery manufacturing, which is important for electric vehicles or electric mobility, and also solar panel manufacturing, which is important for harnessing the solar energy. Further, regarding the startups, there is a need for boosting innovation through the startup sector. And we note that startups are important drivers of innovation and employment generation. But the startups have been adversely affected due to lack of access to liquidity, which has been created due to the economic slowdown, which is a result of the COVID 19 pandemic and also other issues. So, in this regard, the author suggests that the government must lay down a conducive ecosystem for nurturing and promoting the startups through access to finance, hand holding, tax incentives, and access to market. Further, there is a need for attracting foreign investment through the plug and play model. And under this plug and play model, the investors are provided with land at affordable costs with all necessary pre-clearances including the environmental clearances. And this would provide inbuilt office spaces and all the basic facilities, for example, electricity, water, etc. And this will help in kickstarting the production as early as possible without any hurdles. So this is one example of ease of doing business, and some of the states, for example, Maharashtra and Haryana, have decided to adopt such plug and play model to boost foreign investment in respective states. And accordingly, the author suggests that such plug and play models need to be replicated by other states in India as well, and that is likely to attract foreign investment. So basically, this is a step aimed at enhancing the ease of doing business through one of the models which will help in attracting foreign investment in India. Another focus sector is investments of the NRIs and the overseas Indian citizens. And accordingly, the government should call upon the NRIs and the OCIs to make foreign investments into India to aid the economic revival. And as such, the government can consider tax exemptions to the NRIs and overseas citizens of India to attract their investments. So, these are certain suggestions that have been provided by the author for boosting the big businesses, also focusing on the sunrise sectors and how to improve the startup ecosystem. And also, certain suggestions have been provided for inviting or attracting the foreign investment in India. With this, let's take up the next news article now. Now, this article on page number 6 is related to the conflict that happens in the administration of National Capital Territory of Delhi. Now, we note that Delhi is not a full state, and accordingly, its relationship with the central government is not federal in nature like the other states of India. And accordingly, a separate article has been inserted in the Indian Constitution for the administration of Delhi, and that article is known as Article 239AA, and this was inserted through the 69th Constitutional Amendment Act. Now, in the DNS of 9th June 2020, we have discussed elaborately the conflict that happens in the National Capital of Territory because of the discretionary powers that have been provided to the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi and because of the lack of full statehood for the NCT of Delhi. So do go through this video of 9th June 2020 and try and understand the key constitutional features related to the administration of National Capital Territory of Delhi, and they can be important for us from General Studies paper 2 point of view under the topic Constitution and Polity. Now, in the mains examination of 2018, a question was asked related to the Supreme Court judgment which was related to the administration of Delhi and regarding the discretionary powers of the Lieutenant Governor and also full statehood demand for Delhi. And in this regard, after the mains examination of the civil services, we discussed questions that were asked or discussed in the Daily News Simplified or in the Focus magazine or other resources of Rouse IAS. And accordingly, this issue of conflict between the LG of Delhi and the Delhi government was discussed in detail in the DNS videos and also in the Focus magazine. And accordingly, we discussed that question in detail. So let us revise from that video the question that was asked in the mains examination of 2018 and how it was covered in different sources of Rouse IAS. And this will also help you in understanding as to how to use the resources that are available for you in an optimal manner for your exam point of view. So today we will take up this question which was related to a tussle between the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi and the elected government of Delhi. And the question asked whether the Supreme Court judgment of July 2018 can settle the political tussle between the Lieutenant Governor and the elected government of Delhi. So this becomes a part of the General Studies paper 2 under the topic Indian Polity. Now, this judgment of Supreme Court which was related to the governance of Delhi was covered in the Daily News Simplified of 5th July 2018. And if you look at the previous year questions, it was also asked in year 2016. And the question was related to the conflicts between the elected representatives and the institution of Lieutenant Governor in the administration of Delhi. Now, the issue of Delhi government versus the institution of Lieutenant Governor was also discussed in the Focus magazine of December. And it was also discussed in the Daily News Simplified of 5th July 2018. Now, before answering such question, you should know about the status of Delhi. So regarding Delhi, it is neither a state nor a union territory. This is because it was a union territory till the year 1991. However, after the 69th Constitutional Amendment Act, it was given a special status. And after that, it came to be formally known as the National Capital Territory of Delhi. And based on the 69th Constitutional Amendment Act, the Article 239AA was inserted in the Constitution. And this article provided that the Legislative Assembly of Delhi shall have the power to make laws on all the subjects enumerated in state list or in the concurrent list. However, the Legislative Assembly of Delhi cannot make laws on following entries under the state list. So it provided for exception on the legislative power of Delhi Assembly. And it provided that the Legislative Assembly of Delhi cannot make laws on first, public order, second, policing, and third was related to land. So a major aspect of the unique status of Delhi is that the government of Delhi does not enjoy all powers with respect to lawmaking, which are enjoyed by other states. And you might be knowing that full-fledged states other than Delhi can make laws on public order, police and land as well. Further, this Article 239AA defines the powers of lieutenant governors. And the article says that there shall be a council of ministers and the chief minister at the head to aid and advise the lieutenant governors. And the chief minister will aid and advise the lieutenant governor in the exercise of his functions in relation to matters with respect to which legislative assembly has power to make laws. However, it provides for an exception. The exception is that the lieutenant governor can act in his own discretion at times. Further, the article provides that if there is any difference of opinion between the lieutenant governor and his ministers on any matter, the lieutenant governor shall refer it to the president, and the lieutenant governor will act according to the decision given by the president. So simply the Article 239AA provided that Delhi Legislative Assembly can make laws on state and concurrent list. However, it cannot make laws on three of the issues, and they were the public order, police and the land. Further, it provided with chief minister who will aid and advise the lieutenant governor. However, the lieutenant governor was provided with certain discretionary powers. And in case of any difference of opinion between the LG and the council of minister, the LG could refer the matter to president, and he can act according to the decision given by the president. So he was not bound by the aid and advice of council of minister in certain conditions. And the controversy between the elected representatives of Delhi and the institution of lieutenant governor started because of these discretionary clauses, which provided that in case of any difference of opinion between LG and ministers, the LG can refer that matter to president. Further, the controversy was also related to all these three matters. This is because Delhi was not a full-fledged state, and the elected representatives of Delhi demanded that Delhi should be accorded the status of a full state. Now, this contentious issue of administration of the NCT of Delhi was challenged in the High Court, and the High Court stated that the Lieutenant Governor is the administrative head of the national capital. Further, the High Court stated that Delhi continues to be a union territory rather than a full-fledged state. So the High Court's decision was that Delhi is not a full-fledged state and the LG remains as the administrative head of the national capital. Further, the High Court stated that the Lieutenant Governor enjoys discretionary powers as per the Constitution and has greater role to play in administration of national capital of Delhi. So the High Court of Delhi cleared that the LG was the head of the national capital territory and it was not the Chief Minister of Delhi. Further, the High Court provided that LG enjoys discretionary powers and he had greater role to play in the administration of national capital territory of Delhi. So this means that the power of the elected representatives was curbed or limited by this High Court's decision. However, the decision of High Court was challenged in Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court provided in its judgment that LG is bound by the aid and advice of Delhi government. It also provided for collaborative federalism. And the Supreme Court clarified the manner in which the administration of Delhi should be conducted. Now, the Supreme Court in July 2018 provided judgment on all these points. So, the Supreme Court clarified about the role of Lieutenant Governor in the administration of Delhi. It also talked about the impact of aid and advice of the Council of Ministers on the Lieutenant Governor. Further, it provided decision on the demand of statehood for Delhi. It also clarified the status of elected representatives of Delhi, and it also talked about the collaborative federalism in the administration of Delhi. So these were the 5 aspects of the judgment of Supreme Court of 2018. Now first let us look at the controversy based on which the judgment was given. Now the main pressure point was that the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi was under the impression that he had the authority to refer any matter to President for the consultation. Now due to this, the balance was in favor of centre, because some of the decisions of government of Delhi were blocked by the Lieutenant Governor. And we know that the Delhi High Court in its 2016 concurred with the view of LG. This means that the High Court's decision provided for primacy of Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. However, this was challenged by the elected representatives in Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court in its judgment clarified that an elected government of Delhi cannot be undermined by an unelected administrator, that is the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. Further, the Supreme Court has effectively restored the primary role played by the representative government in the national capital territory of Delhi. So this was basically the essence of the judgment of Supreme Court. Further, the Supreme Court talked about collaborative federalism, and it provided that for the progress of a nation, both the central government, the Lieutenant Governor and the state government or the elected representatives of Delhi should work together. and the manner in which the elected representatives of Delhi and the Lieutenant Governor function should be with the intention to arrive at a solution for a problem. So the Supreme Court clarified that the union government and the state government should endeavor to address the common problems with the intention of arriving at a solution. Further, the Supreme Court directed that the union and the state government should express their readiness to achieve the common objective and work together for it. So simply the Supreme Court provided that to solve the tussle in the administration of National Capital Territory of Delhi, both the governments, that is the central and the state government, should work towards collaborative federalism. Further, the Supreme Court clarified about the role of Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. And under this, the Supreme Court said that the governance of Delhi cannot rest upon the whims of one functionary, that is the Lieutenant Governor. And he cannot refer every matter of Delhi government to the President, as provided in the Article 239A. Further, the Supreme Court cautioned the Lieutenant Governor against sending every trivial dispute with the government to the President. And it suggested that the Lieutenant Governor must work harmoniously with his ministers. Further, the Supreme Court advised that both Chief Minister of Delhi and the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi hold constitutional posts, and they should work in a collaborative manner and should fulfill the concept of collaborative federalism. Further, talking about the importance of the elected representatives of Delhi, the Supreme Court judgment said that it is the people who are sovereign, and the decisions of the elected government in Delhi represent the public will, perception, and popular sentiment. And we know that in a representative democracy, the will of the people is primary. Further, the Supreme Court observed that a well-deliberated legitimate decision of the Council of Ministers cannot be rejected by the negative attitude of Lieutenant Governor. This is because the Council of Ministers represents members which are elected by the people. So indirectly, the Council of Ministers is representing the public will, perception, and popular sentiment. Further, the Supreme Court judgment observed that the negative attitude of Lieutenant Governor impacts the concept of collective responsibility. Further, the judgment observed that if the collective responsibility of the Council of Ministers is not given the expected weightage, there will be corrosion or demeaning of essential features of representative government or representative democracy. So simply the Supreme Court judgment provided that legitimate decisions of the Council of Ministers should not be rejected by a negative attitude of Lieutenant Governor. And the Lieutenant Governor should work with the Council of Ministers in a collaborative manner. Further, the Supreme Court judgment analyzed the status of aid and advice provided by the Council of Ministers to the Lieutenant Governor. And previously there was an issue that whatever aid and advice was given to Lieutenant Governor, he used to sit over that matter without taking any decision. So in this regard, the Supreme Court observed that the Lieutenant Governor has no independent decision-making power, and he has to either act on the advice or aid of Council of Ministers, or he is bound to implement the decision taken by the President on a reference being made by him. Further, in case of difference of opinion, the LG should straight away refer the dispute to the President for a final decision without sitting over it or stultifying the governance in national capital. So simply either he should take a decision on the aid and advice provided by the Council of Ministers, or he should refer that matter to the President straight away without wasting any time. This is because sitting over a decision and not taking a decision on any matter leads to pendency of decision, and it ultimately leads to policy paralysis. So in this regard, the Supreme Court has clarified that LG should either act on the aid and advice of Council of Ministers, or he should straight away refer the dispute to President for a final decision. So in this manner, the Supreme Court has tried to solve the issue of pendency or the policy paralysis in Delhi. Further, the Supreme Court also commented on the demand for statehood. And the Supreme Court in this regard did not agree with the demand of full statehood which was demanded by the government of Delhi. Thus it means that critical powers like police, land and public order still remain vested with the centre. Further, the Supreme Court took reference of the 1987 Balakrishnan Committee and concluded that Delhi is not a state. So simply the Supreme Court has clarified and given directions on various contentious issues and directed the centre and state to work in a collaborative manner. However, it has not accepted the demand of full statehood for Delhi. Now, all the aspects of the controversy between the elected representatives of Delhi and the institution of Lieutenant Governor were covered in the August edition of Focus magazine, wherein it provided for the background of this issue. It highlighted the Constitution's 69th Amendment Act and also highlighted the Article 239AA. This edition of Focus magazine also highlighted the recent judgment of the Supreme Court and the various aspects that were covered under this judgment. For example, it covered the status of aid and advice provided by the Council of Ministers to the Lieutenant Governor. It also talked about the role of Lieutenant Governor. And finally, it talked about the demand of statehood for the National Capital Territory of Delhi. Now, as the question reads, whether the Supreme Court judgment can settle the political tussle between the Lieutenant Governor and the elected government of Delhi, this required us to take a stand on this issue. So, after elaborating all these aspects of the judgment, you could have taken a stand according to your understanding. Now, this article on page number 7 is related to the contempt of the court case that has been started against Advocate Prashant Bhushan of the Supreme Court regarding his tweets against the Chief Justice of India and also regarding the judiciary of India. Now, we note that this issue of contempt of the court has been continuously in news, and accordingly it has been discussed in detail in the DNS of 27 July 2020 in detail because two articles related to contempt of the court appeared in the newspaper on that day, and accordingly all important aspects of the contempt of the court have been discussed in detail. So do go to the DNS of 27 July 2020 to understand the issue of contempt of the court in detail. With this we conclude today's discussion. Now let's take up the question for the day.